without further ado, we're going to jump into our July top 24 running backs by ADP right here. If this is your first time listening or viewing us, please go ahead and like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. It would help us grow the platform, continue to put out daily videos for you. If you're listening to us on the audio platforms, especially on Apple, go ahead and leave us a 5-star review. That would also help us rank, and suggest the show to a friend. That can't hurt, especially if they're not in your league and they're not direct competition to you.
Yeah. Exactly.
Without further ado, we're going to jump into our July top 24 running backs by ADP. We're not going to dive into all of these. That would be the longest show in the history. We are going to dive into a few guys we wanted to talk about based on where they're going in ADP, based on the fact we haven't really dove into them this offseason quite yet. And maybe we like or dislike where they're going. So without further ado, Chelsea, why don't you take us through the top 24 and we'll pick out these guys.
Sounds great. So coming in the first overall ADP spot, we've got Christian McCaffrey, followed by Saquon Barkley, Ezekiel Elliott, Alvin Kamara, Dalvin Cook, and Derrick Henry, which I know you guys want to talk about.
Yeah, so I popped Derrick Henry in here on Johnny because we had briefly talked about his contract situation and how of guys with contracts, we actually like him the most, which would mean, or at least most to kind of improve upon or stay the same this year, which would mean he's going behind two guys, as Chelsea just mentioned, with contract issues themselves in Alvin Kamara and Dalvin Cook, or in contract years themselves. So I want to just talk a little bit about about Derrick Henry here, Johnny, because look, last year he led the league in carries with 303. He led the league in yards with 1,540. He was one of the best running efficient runners, 5.1 yards per carry. We know this offensive line is good. We know they want to lean on Derrick Henry. He's not really out in the media talking about his contract situation. He's being very quiet about that. He wants to get the deal done, but he also signed his tag. So he's very faithful in the organization, probably because this was his first year he actually went through on all of his efficient or on all of his hype. So I think that's a big part of it. But still, number 4 in fantasy points per game on a per game basis. He's been creeping into my top tier, especially with the Dalvin Cook thing. And I think there's a case to be made that he could go, as the number 3, as the number 4 back in fantasy drafts, just based on pure volume alone. And especially if you're in a standard league. So Johnny, what's your take on Derrick Henry? Do you think, as much as somebody can be in the top 7 positions, do you think he's being slept on a little bit?
I mean, there's for sure a case to be made. You made a good point. Obviously, these ADPs are in half-point PPR, and we all know that Derrick Henry doesn't get a lot of receiving volume, and so that's more so why his ADP is lower. But yeah, if you're in a standard league, there is no reason why you shouldn't consider Derrick Henry at that number 3 spot. I mean, you can make a very realistic argument that he's going to get more touches than Ezekiel Elliott, that there's a good chance he's going to get more touches than Alvin Kamara. If you're not worried, you're worried about the efficiency of Alvin Kamara or whatever. I mean, Derrick Henry is a big, bulky running back. You know what Tennessee wants to do. They're not going to change their game plan. It was working. They were winning. So why would they switch it up now? Like you said, Derrick Henry, contract year. It's a 1-year proof. Like, he wants to get his money. So I have no problem with people who want to take Derrick Henry sooner than this RB6.
Yeah. So Chelsea, who do we got next?
Next up is Joe Mixon, and then Nick Chubb right after that. And the running back for Green Bay, Aaron Jones, comes into the next slot. I know you guys wanted to say a few words about Aaron Jones.
I got to stop you there. Oh. Aaron Jones, guys.
Fired up.
Aaron Jones at RB9 off the board, coming off in the second round, 204. Really? Really?
What are your thoughts? Is he too high? Is he too low? What do you want?
You just want me to come out and tell you right off the bat?
Yeah, that's why they're listening to the episode.
Unbelievable. Last year. Okay, so Aaron Jones is coming off right after Nick Chubb and right after Joe Mixon, right before Kenyon Drake and Josh Jacobs. We'll get into those guys in a second. Only 5 games last year where Aaron Jones didn't reach pay dirt. 5 games he didn't reach pay dirt. He had 19 total touchdowns in 2019. We were huge fans of Aaron Jones last year. You go back, watch the tape. We loved him. We thought he was a steal going in the second round. And so I want to look at what we know. We know that Aaron Jones got all the goal line carries. And what are the most vulnerable thing that, I mean, he scored the most touchdowns of anybody. And we all know that touchdowns are the most fluky thing from year to year, or hardest thing to reproduce. So then they go out and they draft, A.J. Dillon, who is a big, bulky guy, which you would think would use around the goal line. So what I wanted to do is I told you there were 5 games last year where Aaron Jones didn't reach pay dirt. So I want to look at those 5 games and say, okay, well, what is my range of outcomes if he doesn't score a touchdown? Because I think AJ Dillon will be the goal line back. What do you know? This is not pretty at all. Week 1, 3.9 fantasy points. Week 6, 4 fantasy points. Week 9, 2.9 fantasy points. Week 12, 3.8 fantasy points, and week 13, 3.1 fantasy points. Those are all of the games he did not score a touchdown in, and in all of those games, you were beyond disappointed. I think that people are going to be beyond disappointed if they grab Aaron Jones in the second round, because he is not going to be the goal line back. They are going to use A.J. Dillon there. He will get the receiving down back, for sure, and he'll get some early down work, but he had 236 carries last year. That will go down. They will use a more 50-50 split now, and he had 69 targets, which is pretty nice. Good job, Aaron Jones, 69 targets. But I do think that will go up a little bit because he will be the pass-catching one there. But still, I think that RB9 is absolutely absurd for Aaron Jones. Please do not buy into that. I am majorly concerned. I'm hitting that panic button. Stay away from me, Aaron Jones. Pick 204. Unbelievable. Come on now.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a little too high right now. What my hope is that he'll, a lot of this will come out. More A.J. Dillon hype will come out, and you could see Aaron Jones fall a little bit because maybe it's me being a homer and a Packer fan, but I do see a situation where the Packers could become one of the most efficient rushing offenses in the league with this duo. And I just think back to the way that Sean Payton revived the Saints into a Mark Ingram, Alvin Kamara role of a 1-2 punch, and how Kamara was still able to succeed on high efficiency. When we talk about breakaway runs, yards per carry, home run hitting runs, and we talk about Alvin Kamara, but almost in the same breath, you could talk about Aaron Jones. His numbers are very comparable to Alvin Kamara's in those categories. And so if you actually take the load off of him as the rusher, as the pounder, yes, maybe the touchdowns do go down. Maybe he's not going to be that top 10 guy, which is hard for you to take in the second round. I agree. But if he can slip a little bit in ADP, you could be seeing a situation where they pound the rock with A.J. Dillon, and then Aaron Jones becomes like a Kamara out of the backfield and is catching a lot of passes in space, and they're doing it that way. I just want to talk a little bit about Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams. There were 13 Jamal Williams games where he was fully healthy last year. He got 56% of the snaps in those games. 66%. That's Aaron Jones got 56% of the snaps in those games. So even with Jamal Williams being fully healthy, 66% of those of the snaps in the 3 games without. So he did get an uptick, but 50% of the rushing market share is pretty good.
Yeah.
So yes, I do think A.J. Dillon is a lot better than Jamal Williams. His draft stock is second round, so he's obviously going to be used more than Jamal Williams. But I think there is a case that they could kind of function together. You look at the games in the passing, there was 10% of these games in those 13 games, 10% went to Jamal Williams in the market share for targets, meaning that I don't think A.J. Dillon is as good a pass catcher as Jamal Williams was. And I actually think that Aaron Jones could actually see an uptick in receiving work than he saw, because he saw 11% with Williams on the field. So you could see him go closer to 15, 16, 17% of the market share in targets, which could counteract. We've talked about how targets are more valuable than rushing attempts. So you could actually see a situation where Aaron Jones kind of gets more into the Kamara role this year. But yes, I would agree with you, Johnny. That second round ADP is very scary. You'd be banking on the touchdowns, which we know are very volatile. All right, Chelsea, who's next?
The 10th running back off the board is Kenyon Drake, and the 11th is Josh Jacobs, who I know you've got words for.
I am so glad we skipped over Kenyon Drake. If we have another episode where Johnny talks about Kenyon Drake, dude, we will lose subscribers.
Well, if you, we got to move on to this Josh Jacobs, or else we could end up having a Drake conversation.
Quicksand.
Oh man! All right, so Johnny, talk to me about Josh Jacobs, because I honestly think, unlike Aaron Jones, Josh Jacobs could be going a little too late here.
It is unbelievable. Josh Jacobs has been on an absolute decline for the last 2 months, and I have no idea why. It does not make any sense. Dalvin Cook has only slipped 2 spots, and he, is saying that he's threatening for a holdout. Joe Mixon, people are listening to us apparently because Joe Mixon has jumped majorly. But somehow, I don't know why, Josh Jacobs is the guy who falls out of everybody. I get it. He only played in 13 games last season. You look at his total fantasy production, 181.6 total fantasy points. It doesn't scream off the page for a guy that, it's saying there, 20. Oh my gosh, that's unbelievable. Pick 207 in the second is wow. Okay. So he was an RB15 last year, okay, on a points per game basis with 14.7. He is going off the board currently as an RB11, pick 207, which you could be saying, well, Johnny, you just told me he was RB15. He's currently going as the RB11. So what is your big issue? Why are you freaking out right now?
What is your major malfunction?
What is my major malfunction? Well, you look at last year, 242 carries. That was number 13 in the league, and he missed
in only
3
13 games.
Yeah. He missed 13. That was an average of 18.6 of touches per game, rushes per game. That's great. And then you look at his receiving game, he only had 28 targets, Travis. Now, the big thing where people were like, well, 28 targets, that's not very much, and why are you freaking out? Well, his major thing when he was coming out of college was how well he could catch the ball, and yet they didn't do that. Well, we found out afterwards it was because the coaching staff, they were kind of doing the David Johnson kind of role where they were like, hey, he's a rookie. We want to kind of keep the governor on him a little bit. We don't want to unleash him fully. And they've already come out and said, we expect to unleash him fully this year. And so I think that we could see a jump like David Johnson saw when he was fully given taking the training wheels off. So I love...
Yeah, like Johnny, you mentioned the low receiving. He still averaged over 20 touches. So with the 18 rushing attempts per game, plus a couple carry, like he averaged over 20 touches in a game. That's a bell cow back for you. He averaged over 100 yards per game, bell cow back for you. I mean, these are huge numbers for a guy that's going in the second round. If you went running back heavy, you'd be looking at a stud in the first round and then Josh Jacobs in the second. Like, sign me up for guys that could maybe finish both of your running backs in the top 5.
Oh my gosh. If you were able to get Drake,
Derrick Henry,
in theory, you could get
Derrick Henry and then Josh Jacobs.
But like, even if you went with Drake and Josh Jacobs, like, okay, like I think that's sexy as hell. Like, okay,
Did you take Drake in the first round? I knew we were going to talk about Drake.
No, I don't want to get into that. I just would think. I do think that Aaron Jones will slip. I think that Josh Jacobs will flip-flop with Aaron Jones, and I think that you could even jump ahead of Nick Chubb, to be honest with you, So
I see. You're saying Josh Jacobs belongs in the first round, is probably going to end up being in the first round.
Yeah.
That makes a lot more sense to me. I believe in that for sure. All right, who's next? Chelsea?
Yeah, the running back 12 is Austin Eckler, followed by Miles Sanders, my boy, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. After that, we've got Todd Gurley as the running back 15 off the board, Leonard Fournette, Melvin Gordon next to him, Chris Carson, Le'Veon Bell, James Conner at the running back 20 spot, David Johnson at RB21, followed by Jonathan Taylor of the Indianapolis Colts.
All right, I gotta stop you there, Chelsea. You've been listing off these names, and I've been okay with the majority of them. There's a couple that I'm like, I cringe a little bit when I hear where they're going. Austin Eckler, but we'll let you get through it. But I'm sorry, I have to stop you at Jonathan Taylor. RB22 off the board, 5th round. If you're listening to this podcast now, you probably know who Jonathan Taylor is because you're, more into fantasy football than the average person. But let's say you're listening to this in late July, this episode, right? And you're not sure who Jonathan Taylor is. So you're saying, why is he going so high? RB22, never heard of this guy. Well, his player comp is Ezekiel Elliott on Player Profiler. He is supposed to be a very good workhorse running back. He is one of the most successful running backs in the college. In his college career, he had over 2,000 yards rushing every single year. He's a beast running back. I love it. Then he gets drafted, high draft capital for the Indianapolis Colts. So you're like, okay, I understand high draft capital. We saw what high draft capital does to running backs last year. David Montgomery and Josh Jacobs. They crept up to the 3rd and 4th round come rookie drafts. So you're like, okay, I can kind of buy this. Why are you stopping at Jonathan Taylor? Here are my concerns. You still have Marlon Mack there. You still have Nyheim Hines. Now, people want to fade Marlon Mack hard, and Nyheim Hines is the hotness, the deep stash that a lot of people are talking about because of Phillip Rivers coming in, and I second that. I like the Nyheim Hines. But there is a community in the fantasy football community that is, they believe Marlon Mack will be used significantly. And some of those are very, very reputable opinions in the fantasy football community. And so it makes me wonder just a little bit. I understand that Jonathan Taylor is a wonderful, wonderful running back. I understand that the Colts offensive line is one of the best in the league. I do understand that the Colts love to run the ball, especially around the goal line. But I just am not sure. An RB22 means that you are wanting him to be your RB2 in most cases, and that is a three workhorse back this year. I just see that running back as a three-headed monster, and also 5th round Travis.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Yeah, I agree 100% with you here. I don't mean to cut you off, but I had to jump in on this train too because I just think he's going too high right now based on everything you said. Look, I understand why you would want Jonathan Taylor. This is the first Colts running back drafted before the 4th round since Chris Ballard took over as GM, right? They also traded up for him. Look, they have an elite offensive line. Quentin Nelson is a beast, dude. But the bottom line is, where did Frank Reich come from? He came from Philadelphia. And who was his head coach before he was the head coach in Indianapolis?
Doug
Peterson.
Doug.
And what do we say about Doug Peterson? He doesn't use bell cow backs. He just doesn't.
Oh, no. Travis? Oh, shit.
What?
Okay, go. Start again. Sorry.
Can I go now or no?
Yes, go.
All right.
I'm going to go.
Where did Frank Reich come from, Johnny? He came from that Philadelphia coaching tree. His head coach was Doug Peterson, the guy that we always complain about not giving carries to his running backs, or at least one running back, right? Johnny talked about a couple of shows ago, Miles Sanders and the concern of having Doug Peterson as your head coach. When they talk about these two running backs, Jonathan Taylor and Marlon Mack, the coaching staff for the Colts keeps saying the phrase 1-1 punch. That doesn't sound like one guy's got the job over the other guy, meaning It sounds like both guys have the same job and they're going to get equal opportunity to do the same work. And we already know that they love Nyheim Hines. As Johnny said, he will be the pass catching back. No matter what you think of Jonathan Taylor's ability to catch the football in the future, or Marlon Mack could have the best year of his life catching the football, it doesn't matter because Nyheim Hines has the role. He has the role, and that's what's going to happen. I think that is way too high for Jonathan Taylor. I understand the excitement. I understand that offensive line, but this is not a team like I almost think like invest in Marlon Mack later. He's being written off completely, and maybe you get the guy that gets the touchdowns this year for that awesome offensive line, and you don't have to spend all this capital, like Johnny said, taking away from wide receivers earlier on.
Well, and so that's not only that, but then you look at Marlon Mack doesn't have a lot of time left on his contract, and we just got done saying how much mileage Jonathan Taylor had on his legs. So wouldn't it behoove Indianapolis to use Marlon Mack this year a little bit more, rest Jonathan Taylor a little bit, get him carries, get him experience,
have him learn the playbook.
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit on Mock Draft Monday about how maybe COVID is the area where we see a little bit slower progression for these rookie running backs, these rookie wide receivers, because they don't have the full installment of these game plans. They don't have time with their quarterback. I mean, we take this for granted, but a handoff, just accepting a handoff from a quarterback, getting those reps in practice is big for a rookie running back who is not used to playing with pro quarterbacks. And what have we always said about the Chargers with Phillip Rivers? I mean, the reason Danny Woodhead stayed on the field so much is because Phillip Rivers loved him. He could count on him. He trusted him. And Phillip Rivers, in the very end of his career here, you think he's just going to be like, yeah, Jonathan Taylor's my guy now? No, he will go to the coaching staff and say, whichever of these running backs is the guy you trust, that guy will see the field more. I just don't think it's as guaranteed as this running back 22 ADP would suggest.
Yep.
Moving on, Chelsea, who's next?
Yeah, we've got two guys left to round out the top 24 running back slots here as we start July. And the 23rd overall running back off the board is Raheem Mostert.
So Raheem Mostert, Colonel Mustard, as he's been called before. Raheem Mostert is maybe, I don't know. In my opinion, I've taken him in multiple mock drafts because of this ADP, but I think he might be going a little too late for me. What San Fran's able to do, what he's been able to do, I really like him. But Johnny, what's your take on this ADP currently?
So, I'm interested. You think he's going right now off the board as RB23, and 503 pick, and you think that he is coming off too late or too early?
Yeah, I think he's coming off too late. I think he's for sure an RB2. And he's coming in the back end of RB2 range. Like, he is for sure an RB2 in my mind, and I can get into that. But if you think he should...
So he has... I mean, we'll get into it right now. I mean, he's got a great O-line, right? So I'm not going to deny that. San Francisco has a great offensive line. You got the Kyle Shanahan offense, which, hell, me and you could get behind there. We can sign an undrafted free agent contract and probably run for 1,000 yards behind that line and in that scheme. It feels like anybody could be a 1,000-yard rusher behind that line. You look at what Mostert did down the stretch, 12 touchdowns in the final 9 games. Very, very impressive.
Led the NFL in those 9 games.
He led the NFL. You are correct. Raheem Mostert is going to get a lot of traction. There's going to be a lot of people. Big Travy loves him. Weeks 5 through 17, however, he only had 1 game where he had over 15 carries. You also have Tevin Coleman there.
Yeah, Tevin Coleman was hurt during that time.
Okay, yeah, Tevin Coleman was hurt.
And there was another player that was there during that time that he was not getting touches.
Okay.
Who is no longer there? That's Matt Breida.
Okay, and there was also a running back there that was not getting touches because he was injured. But they also have a ton of money invested in his entire career and have never panned out and paid for. That would be McKinnon. Remember this guy, McKinnon, signed from Minnesota.
You are not reaching for Jerick McKinnon right now.
I'm just stating a fact that he is on the roster. They paid him $33 million and have yet to even get a single snap out of him on an actual Sunday. So
Good.
I'm just saying.
See you later.
But okay, I will end it with this, or I will pass it over to you to give your argument, because you're really, really big on him. Can you name me the last time where you took a San Francisco running back that was supposedly the starter and he actually paid off the value at which you drafted him? I will wait.
What are we talking? You're talking about San Francisco historically producing running backs as if there's some sort of tangible argument?
No.
Why don't we talk about Kyle Shanahan? Why don't we talk about Kyle Shanahan having success? Alfred Morris. You can look back to Washington and his days there. You can look back at Atlanta with Tevin Coleman, with Devonta Freeman, with Kyle Shanahan. Yeah. Why don't we look at the coach? So whoever's the starter, who did they rely on in the playoffs and in the Super Bowl when it mattered the most? Who was their running back?
In the Super Bowl, it was Raheem Mostert, right? I get it.
And in the playoffs, it was Raheem Mostert. And as you said, no, hold on, Johnny. It's my time.
Go ahead.
It's my time now. In the last 9 games of the season, you said it. 12 rushing counts.
So don't ask me a question and then cut me off if you're going to.
He said because I will. He said he led all running backs in percentage of rushes that went for 5+ yards and 10+ yards last season. All running backs. He was 10th amongst running backs in yards per rush after first contact. Okay, so even with that great offensive line, he's a good runner himself because after first contact, he's in the top 10. The guy is a stud. You've got Tevin Coleman on an aging contract. You've got Jerick McKinnon. Sure, I'll give you that. Jerick McKinnon, they have money invested in him. But we've seen what teams do with injured guys that have money invested. Todd Gurley was supposedly the best running back in the league, and the Rams said, bye-bye, see you later. Okay? They know what they have in Mostert. They liked it enough to let Matt Breida go out the door. Mostert is their guy on a very run-heavy offense, a top 3 run-heavy offense in the league. Shanahan has they just saw Deebo Samuel go down. You think they lost Emmanuel Sanders. Yes, they drafted Brandon Ayuk, but they're still going to be a team that runs so much. And even if Tevin Coleman siphons off a few carries per week, Raheem Mostert will be the guy, and he is going to be their starter, and he is going to be on one of the best offenses in the league. I'll take him, man.
You sound very, very confident he's going to be the starter. One could say that I was pretty confident that Tevin Coleman was the starter last year. Were you pretty excited when you got him in the 6th or 7th round last year? I thought I was. I was pretty excited when I got him in the 6th and 7th round. Was I excited at the end of the season?
Yeah, no. I would say the difference is, I'd say the difference, though, with the San Fran this year and last year is we didn't know that San Fran was going to be that good. They had the pieces in place. We thought they could, but they hadn't made the jump yet.
2 years ago, they were really good at running the ball 2 years ago because
but we
Matt
didn't think they'd be as good
there.
as they were last year.
Okay, well, so here's my point. 2 years ago, I love the Kyle Shanahan. He produces great running backs. My point is not the Kyle. Yeah, whatever running back Kyle Shanahan puts behind there is going to be a productive running back. My remark is that I have to pay a 5th round value for Raheem Mostert, and right now I don't know he is the starting running back 100%. Tevin Coleman is still there. Tevin Coleman still got more than just a few touches because we can pull it up because I don't even think he was the lead running back, was he? During those games when Raheem Mostert down the stretch, how many carries did he get? I'm gonna bring it up right now. Looking down the stretch of last year, he got 19 touches in week 13, 10, 14, 11, and 10. So we act like he's the starting running back and that Shanahan has all this confidence in him, but we don't know that. And Tevin Coleman is much cheaper. I would rather go with Tevin Coleman and take him at Tevin Coleman's ADP in the 10th or 9th round because I don't know that Raheem Mostert is going to be the guy. I don't know this because Kyle Shanahan picked up 2 unrestricted free agents, undrafted free agents, that he could throw those guys in and they could go for 1,000 yards. So I get the system. I love the system. It will produce a really good running back, but am I confident enough to take Raheem Mostert in the 5th round? Absolutely not. No, that's absurd.
It's not absurd. I don't think it's absurd, but I understand your concern. I understand wanting to get value. Sure. I think it's worth the risk as an RB2 that could end up being a top 5 running back easily if he's the guy any given week. So I mean, I don't want to sit here and say that I don't want you to discredit the upside completely out of Raheem Mostert when we just talked about all the reasons why San Fran you should invest in. But I do agree that the strategy would be, if you're not going to take Mostert, make sure you take Tevin Coleman. Like, make sure you take a piece of this offense. That's the bottom line here. Mm-hmm. You should get a piece of this offense. But scaring people completely off the guy who is projected to be the 1A right now in a hot hand committee of San Francisco is
when
kind
his
of
draft value is 503 or wherever it's at right now. Absolutely.
5th round, you would have gotten 2 running backs and 2 wide receivers if you drafted smartly, and then your flex could be Raheem Mostert. Yeah, man.
Yeah, I would rather have A.J. Brown or DJ Moore or any of the wide receivers going in that 5th round. I would much rather have them than Raheem Mostert in that 5th round, which I have no idea. 2 years. I wanted to say this.
Saying that, but
yes,
they have 9 games, almost 10 games, like where he showed he was the guy for them. He did it, and he led the league in touchdowns, and he led the league in points.
2 years ago, Matt Breida showed an entire season in which he was a really good running back. They didn't care. They went out and got Tevin Coleman. Then last year, I was excited. Tevin Coleman, they went out and got him. He's going to be the starting running back. We took him high. Was he? No. They ended up giving the ball to Raheem Mostert. They pulled off Jeff Wilson off of the practice squad to be the goal line backup at times.
Yeah, there's no argument that there's going to be a lot of running backs, but there is a 1A. There is a 1B.
You're literally just admitting. You're saying, yes, I understand that there's going to be a lot of running backs, and I totally understand, but I'm going to disregard
it's like New England. You're not just going to sit and not draft a New England running back because there's a lot of them.
Not till later. Last year you drafted Sony.
Up Sony Michel because of all the carries.
Because you could get him in the 8th round. You could get him in the 8th round. That's the difference. I'm not paying 5th round. Just like last year, I wouldn't pay 5th round for Sony. And guess what? If you did, because the volume was there, and you think that he's on a good offense, you were vastly disappointed. It's all about draft capital. If you told me Raheem Mostert is going in the 9th or 10th round, where Tevin Coleman is going, I would say absolutely sign me up. Yes, because he does have the upside to be a top 5, top 10 running back, 100%. But when you're talking about draft capital of 5th rounder, absolutely not. Sign me off of that. No. Too much risk. I've never been happy with drafting the very first running back for San Francisco.
Hey man, you got to have some risk in building a championship squad. I'll just tell you that.
That is true. Yeah, 100%.
So 5th round's a good a shot as any to take on your guy.
Let us know, Whisper Nation, if you would take Raheem Mostert in the 5th round in the comments below. Or hit us up with DMs.
I think we had one more guy, but we're not going to talk about him, right, Chelsea?
Yeah, and I mean, look, guys, it's July 1st, and I'm loving the passion that you're bringing to the conversation and debate around Raheem Mostert. The last running back on the board of this top 24 rundown is Devin Singletary. I just hope there are no more words that Johnny has to say about anybody.
I mean, I could go off on Devin Singletary.
Yeah, we know you have.
But we talked about him on the last show.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, I mean, just like San Fran, Buffalo has multiple running backs there. So I'll just leave it with that. Anyways, Whisper Nation, let us know what you think about these top 24 our ADP guys. Which guys you are higher or lower than the consensus on. We'd love to hear it. As always, make sure, for now, actually, brand new is the fantasy football hotline that we have for you. That's 1-833-4FF-TALK. You could also hit us up there. 1-833-4FF-TALK. For Johnny Game Time Hicks, Chelsea Lee Byers, I'm Big Travy. We are the Fantasy Whisperers, and we're out. Peace. Go buy the draft kit on presale. FantasyWhispers.com.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Whisperers podcast. You can hear more from John and Travis on Google Play, SoundCloud, and iTunes. You can also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at TF Whisperers.